The vast majority of illegal ivory, experts say as much as 70%, is flowing to China. And though the Chinese have coveted ivory for centuries, never before have so many of them been able to afford it. China's economic boom has created a vast middle class, pushing the price of ivory to a stratospheric $1,000 per pound on the streets of Beijing. Ivory Coast got its name from the teeming elephant herds that used to frolic in the forest. Today, after decades of carnage, there is almost no ivory left. The demand for ivory has surged to the point that the tusks of a single adult elephant can be worth more than 10 times the average annual income in many African countries. In Tanzania, impoverished villagers are poisoning pumpkins and rolling them into the road for elephants to eat. In Gabon, subsistence farmers deep in the rainforest are being enlisted to kill elephants and hand over the tusks, sometimes for as little as a sack of salt. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. The earth is they that dwell therein.
We are experiencing what is likely to be the greatest percentage loss of elephants in history, said Richard G. Ruggiero, an official with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Some experts say the survival of the species is at stake, especially when many members of the African security services entrusted with protecting the animals are currently killing them. The huge populations in West Africa have disappeared, and those in the center and east are going rapidly, said Andrew Dobson, an ecologist at Princeton. The question is, do you want your children to grow up in a world without elephants? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the earth and they that dwell therein.
Garambia National Park is a big, beautiful sheet of green, 1,900 square miles tucked in the northeastern corner of Congo. Picture a sea of chest-high elephant grass, swirling brown rivers, ribbons of papyrus, and the occasional black and white secretary bird swooping elephant elegantly through a rose-colored sky. Founded in 1938, Garamba is widely considered one of Africa's most stunning parks, a naturalist's dream. But today it is a battlefield, with an arms race playing out across the savannah. Every morning, platoons of Garamba 140 wildlife rangers suit up with assault rifles, machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenades. Louis Arnaz, the park ranger, wants to get surveillance drones, and the nonprofit organization that runs the park is considering buying night vision goggles, flak jackets, and pickup trucks with mounted machine guns. Mr. Aniago said the strange way the elephant carcasses were found, clumped in a circle, with the calves in the middle for protection, was just another sign that a helicopter had corralled them together, because elephants usually scatter at the first shot. African Parks, the South African-based conservation organization that manages Garamba, has photographed of a Mi-M117 military transport helicopter flying low over the park in April, and said it had traced the chopper's registration number to the Uganda military. Colonel Felix Kuliji, a spokesman for the Uganda military, acknowledged that the helicopter was one of its aircrafts, but he said that the poaching allegation was a baseless rumor, and that he knew for sure that the Lord's Resistance Army members were well-known poachers in that area. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the earth and they that dwell therein.
John Siddle, an American from Nebraska who works as a pilot at Garamba, said, "What bothers me is that it's probably American taxpayer money paying for the jet fuel for the helicopter. The United States has paid tens of millions of dollars in recent years for fuel and transport services for the Ugandan army to hunt down Mr. Coney in Central Africa, while training Congolese and South Sudanese to help. The State Department did not address the broader history of poaching by American-supported militaries. Mr. Aarons, Garamba's director, has an exhausted look in his eyes. History is against him. Garamba was founded more than 70 years ago, in part to protect the rare northern white rhinoceros, which used to number more than 1,000 here. In the past few decades, as Congo has descended into chaos, rhino poachers have moved into Garamba. The park's northern white rhinoceros were among the last in the world anywhere, but rangers have not seen any for the past 5 years. Garamba once had more than 20,000 elephants. Last year, there were around 2,800. This year, maybe. The earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof. The earth, they that dwell therein.
Does it make it a little hard to breathe? You feel like you have a weight on your chest? Maybe an elephant. Karl Barth knew the dangers of reading and holding a newspaper in one hand and the scripture in another. It's heavy. It's hard to hold. It's a heavy, almost unbearable burden. Could there be anything heavier than what we have heard? An ivory Jesus, African. It came into my keeping several years ago when faculty make their annual pilgrimage to the convent of St. John. And the sisters were selling things they did not want or need any longer for mission. And this was among them. And when I asked why, they had forgotten how it came to them. And they don't like it. There's no sign or memory, except scratched into the back of the stand, which apparently was taken out of some altar. It's the date of 1860. Africa. Ivory, crucifixion, Jesus. What's worse is it's not unique. It's not unique. The single most popular thing to carve out of ivory after ivory has been carved out of the elephant is religious stuff. Crosses, crucifixes, Buddhas, the elaborate prayer screens for Islamic worship, the Ganesh elephant head, prayer beads, rosaries, amulets, holy stuff. What would this mean in a world when there aren't any more elephants? This ivory elephant Jesus, what possible redemptive use would there be for such a thing? And I found one answer when I turned to the question of redemption. And it comes from Rosemary Bradford Ruther's collection of Theological History. and I quote, "But some want to ask what kind of suffering is redemptive." Oh, now there is an elephant in the room. Dolores Williams, and I quote, and this is such brave language, it elicited death threats when she first voiced it. What is redemptive is action to extricate ourselves from unjust suffering and changing the conditions that cause it. It is not Jesus' suffering and death that are redemptive, but his life as a praxis of protest against injustice and solidarity in defense of life. The praxis of Jesus we need to imitate is this protest and defense of life, not acquiescence to being crucified, or, I add, allowing other creatures to be crucified, which represents the victory of oppressors who sought to silence him. What might that sound like if it were spoken aloud? What might that sound like if a community voiced this?
Here are my servants who I uphold.
Here
are
our
servants who I uphold. My chosen in whom my soul delights.
Our chosen in whom our soul delights.
I have put my spirit upon them.
We have put our spirit upon them.
They will bring forth justice to the nations.
They will bring forth justice to the nations.
They will cry out and lift up their voices.
They will cry out and lift up their voices.
And make it heard in the streets.
And make it heard in the streets.
A bruised reed they will not break.
A bruised reed they will not break.
And a dimly burning wick they will not quench.
And the dimly burning wick they will not quench.
They will not grow faint or be crushed.
They will not be faint or be crushed.
Until they have established
Justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for their teaching.
What if we meant what we said and said what we meant? What if we, following Jesus, our elephant, ivory, Africa Jesus, undertook a protest, lifted our voices in the street, cried out? What if we, like elephants, refuse to forget that the earth is the Lord's? And what if we, like elephants, when danger comes, would form a circle to protect our young and our old and our homeless and our helpless and all those whom God loves?
In the cold and
Let me invite you to rise and join the circle of Now may the God who came as a sign that death is not the final answer. May Christ who lives among us to protect and defend and redeem empower you to mean what you say what you mean, and do what God will.